everyone. If you've landed on this video, you might be curious like me. This video should give you the knowledge and naming conventions of water bodies and some interesting cases that I learned during my research. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please ask in the comment section down below. Enough talking, let's dive into the details. Have fun watching. Do you know we have a standard body called the United Nations Conventions on the Law of the Sea, or in short form UNCLOS, which defines the attributes of these water bodies? Here is a wiki page for the UNCLOS. If you are interested about reading on this, the link is in the description down below. Let's try to explain about ocean first. I'm taking the Indian Ocean as an example. Following are the attributes when a water body is called ocean and when it's not. First, the water body should be extremely large. Second, should be surrounded by one or more continents. Third, there is no nearby land. Let me repeat. First, the water body should be extremely large. Second, surrounded by one or more continents. Third, there is no nearby land. Let's jump to sea now. I'm taking the Arabian Sea as an example. If you see in the picture, even though the water body is the same as the Indian Ocean, but because it has nearby land, and so instead of calling it an ocean, our geographers call the water body the sea. So the main takeaway is that as soon as the water body starts coming near land, instead of being called an ocean, it's called a sea. There are various aspects that we need to carefully examine before naming the water body. As soon as Indian Ocean water starts to be surrounded by land, the water body has become sea. Remember, following are the attributes when a water body is called sea. First, water must come from an ocean. Second, it must be surrounded by land. Let's see the next water body naming convention. That is Gulf. I'm taking the Gulf of Aden as an example. Following are some of the vital attributes when a water body is called a Gulf. First, the water must flow from a sea. Second, it should be surrounded by land. Third, it should have a narrow mouth or opening. Let me repeat again. First, the water should be flowing from the sea. Second, it should be surrounded by land. Third, it should have a narrow mouth or opening. Let's see one more example of the Gulf. Let me go to a live Google map. So here we are seeing the Gulf of Oman and the Persian Gulf. Both also follow all three attributes, that is water flowing from the sea, which is from the Arabian Sea, a narrow opening, and being surrounded by land. I hope now you can easily identify the Gulf. Not so early. There are tricky cases. Let me touch upon the Red Sea. So here is the Red Sea. At first glance, it looks like a gulf. Water is flowing from the Arabian Sea. It's surrounded by land and has narrow openings, but instead it's called Red Sea, not a gulf. I did some research and found our ancient geographers used to call the Red Sea the Gulf of Arabia or the Arabian Gulf. Let me show the wiki page to confirm my findings. So as you can read here, it's written, historically, it was also known to Western geographers as Mare Mecca, Sea of Mecca, and Sinus Arbaceus, Gulf of Arabia. Some ancient geographers call the Red Sea the Arabian Gulf or Gulf of Arabia. I think our new geographers put more weight on water flowing from the Indian Ocean rather than the Arabian Sea, and thus they assign the name Red Sea instead of Gulf. It's so interesting but also confusing at the same time. I hope I'm able to explain the Gulf properly. If you want, you can pause the video right here and search for other Gulfs around the world. And if you find any anomalous cases, write your thoughts in the comments down below. This is the second water body I'm going to discuss in this video. I hope you're enjoying it. Thanks for staying with me this far. Let's talk about the bay now. I'm using the Bay of Bengal as an example. Following are the attributes of the water body to be called as bay. First, water flows from ocean. As you can see, Indian Ocean water is flowing into the Bay of Bengal. It should have an inward curve and it should have a wide mouth or opening. Let's see this image to understand the most important attribute of bay, that is inward or concave shape. This shape can be formed due to tidal erosion. It has to have a well-marked indentation on the coastline. Let's discuss one mathematic rule. That is, if I draw a line from one end of the mouth to another and use that as a diameter to draw a circle, the water body will be called bay. And if and only if the area of bay is at least half the area of the semicircle that we draw using the diameter. So I just tried to create a circle around the Bay of Bengal. Though it's not accurate, but it's good enough to understand the concept. At the face level, the area of the bay is greater than the semicircle of area drawn using mouse diameter. That's why it's called bay, else it could be called a bite. Generally, the bay should be smaller than the Gulf, but the Bay of Bengal is an exception, as it's larger than the Gulf of Mexico and is equal to the Arabian Sea. Isn't that interesting? As I'm using the Indian Ocean and Arabian Sea and Gulf nearby, I'm taking the Bay of Bengal as an example. This is the last water body I'm going to discuss in this video, and I hope you have been liking this video so far. This last water body is going to be called a strait. These are going to be some attributes that can help you define what a strait is and when it's not. A strait is a naturally formed, narrow, typically navigable waterway that connects two large water bodies. Most commonly, it's a channel of water that lies between two land masses. One strait that was formed by tectonic activity is the Strait of Gibraltar. The only link between the Mediterranean Sea and the Atlantic Ocean. Let's see one more example of Torres Strait, which is again a narrow, naturally formed and navigable path between two water bodies, that is Indian Ocean and Coral Sea. Okay, so for a recap, we have discussed oceans, seas, Gulf, Bay, and Strait, and we also touched upon some tricky cases of the Red Sea. Now, in the final section, let me touch upon really interesting cases that I uncovered while exploring other water bodies to apply my learning. This will also help us to revise what we have learned till now. Let's pull this image of Black Sea. Let's recall when a water body is called sea. Water must flow from ocean and it's surrounded by land. In this case, you can clearly see the water body is surrounded by land. So one condition is good, but the other condition, that is water must flow from ocean, I don't see that happening, but it's still called a sea rather than lake. So I started exploring. Let's jump to Google Maps. And see, is water really flowing from ocean to Black Sea, or is it one more anomaly in water naming? If we see all the nearby water bodies in the Black Sea are also called like Aegean Sea, Mediterranean Sea. Thus, I started looking whether the water from the Atlantic Ocean was reaching to Black Sea, and to my surprise, it was. Wow, see here on the map. If we zoom to Istanbul and see the water is reaching out the Atlantic Ocean from the Black Sea. Can you see? It's right here. It's such a little path that you could not see it if you did not zoom in. So the Black Sea is actually a sea rather than a lake. Isn't this interesting? So before you say, I'm now an expert in identifying these names, identifying the names of these water bodies, let me introduce you with some very tricky but explainable cases. If we just go to the right of the Black Sea, we see the Caspian Sea. I try to apply the same logic that is surrounded by land and water inflow from the ocean, but it failed on what the water inflow from ocean parameter. It should have been called lake, but somehow our geographers named it sea. On further research, On further research, I found Oil Sea, Dead Sea, Salton Sea, and Sea of Galilee are some other water bodies which should be called lakes but instead are called sea. Finally, I even tried to find the reason why they're called sea instead of lake, and I found three reasons: presence of saline water, size of the water body, and depth of the water body. Thank you for watching the whole video. I wish you enjoyed it. And if you have any comments, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please write in the comment section down below. For now, see you next time. Bye bye.